What in the world is going on, everybody? And welcome to episode 2 of Sports World with Ethan Ingelo. Just a little house cleaning to start this up. In the first episode, I said that this was going to be a podcast put on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and such. But I'm going to keep it on YouTube, a YouTube-exclusive podcast for now. And we have a lot of basketball to talk about today. A lot of moves going on in the NBA world. Our last podcast was mostly focused on the MLB Trade Deadline, so this one's going to be mostly focused on the NBA free agency. And a bunch of trades went down for them as well, so we're going to talk about all that. But to start us off, we're going to start with baseball first. Just because of the fact that we're going to be talking mostly about basketball, we're going to start with baseball and football to begin with. And a little cool fact from this past week, all three Cubs players that we talked about in the last podcast that got traded from the Cubs, Javier Baez, Anthony Rizzo, and Kris Bryant, all hit home runs in their very first appearance with their new teams, in their very first game. Kris Bryant for the Giants, Anthony Rizzo for the Yankees, and Javi Baez for the Mets. As a Yankees fan, I do also have to say, Anthony Rizzo is looking like an amazing trade as he has been hot as hell ever since he has gotten to the team. Javi Baez also playing pretty well. I mean, he had that go-ahead home run. That was his first home run. And the Mets fans seem to be loving him. He was chirping at the Marlins the other day. The Marlins were giving him some trash, and he was giving it right back after he hit a home run. He was chirping at him. The Mets seem to love that energy out of him. While we're on the Mets, we're going to talk about the only real big thing besides a couple, the games that were played. The Mets aren't signing their number 10 pick, Kumar Rocker from Vanderbilt, the pitcher, due to injury concerns. He's had some arm injuries that they're concerned about, and they are not willing to take the risk on him due to their history of taking a risk on guys that have injury history. Whether this is going to work out in the long term for them, I still believe Kumar Rocker is an elite-level pitcher. I believe that this could be a mistake for them, but we'll see what happens if he gets signed anywhere else. I believe he's going to return to Vanderbilt for his senior year and try and get drafted again, so hopefully I wish him all the best. That's basically all I have on baseball, to be honest with you. Not much happened this week in the news spectrum of baseball, so we're just going to move right on to the NFL. The NFL had some really interesting things, to be honest with you. Let's start on a positive note. We had Josh Allen signing an extension to stay with the Bills, their quarterback. Josh Allen is signing a 6-year, $280 million extension with $150 million guaranteed, which is the most guaranteed money of any contract of all time. This is great for Josh Allen. He had this horrible first 2 seasons, and then last season he just blew it out the water. All his numbers doubled, tripled. He went so far and beyond, and I'm so glad to see him get this payday that he deserves. Moving on, we have a weird incident in the Giants training camp and Giants practice. There was a fight that ensued that involved Daniel Jones ending up at the bottom of the dog pile. This fight started with Evan Ingram, their tight end, apparently retaliating after a hit was placed on Corey Clement, their running back, by Logan Ryan. Logan Ryan then proceeded to level Ingram from behind, and a full-out brawl ensued, causing the coach, Joe Judge, to punish the players by making them sprint and do push-ups for a good while. All the players from the Giants are claiming that this is just part of football and that this will bring them stronger and closer together. I don't know how that's going to affect everything. I feel like after we saw later on that 2 players were released from the Giants, that possibly there was more to this than we're being told, but that's the information I have for you right now. Joe Judge, the coach, claimed that he is not going to let this happen at his practice, and he said, they had a ton of practice left. They had 2 more periods of practice still to go, but he has to enforce rules and regulations. He has to let his players know that this is not the way to do it. The other interesting news we have from the NFL is that Carson Wentz, the quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts, he is going to be in his first season with the Colts this year, and their Pro Bowler Quentin Nelson, their left guard, both have the same foot injury, which could cause them to be out 5 to 12 weeks. Quentin Nelson came out on Twitter saying that he's glad that it could be 5 weeks because that could prepare him to be ready for week 1 of the regular season. Carson Wentz's injury, apparently, though it is the same injury as Quentin Nelson's, it is believed that Carson's injury is worse. Thus, it's funny, the Colts bring in the same backup quarterback that went on and got a Super Bowl with the Eagles when Carson Wentz went down in that season where they won. They bring in Nick Foles. So it'll be interesting to see if we have a repeat situation, especially given the fact that Frank Reich was with the Eagles, and he's close with both of these guys. Hopefully Carson Wentz comes back healthy and can take control of this team, and Nick Foles doesn't take over again, because it just seems to be what Nick Foles does, and Carson Wentz can't get out of his shadow somehow. But that's all I have for you, really, in baseball and football. So we're going to move on to what the majority of this podcast is going to be, and that is the NBA free agency. The teams are all different now. All the teams are looking so mixed and matched. Players you would have never expected to play for these teams are now on these teams. So let's start with the biggest deal of the day, in my personal opinion. The Miami Heat signed and traded for Kyle Lowry, a 3-year deal worth $90 million. We don't have the exact information on who the Heat sent back over to the Raptors yet, but it is in reports that apparently Goran Dragic and Precious Achiuwa are going to be part of this deal. For the Heat, though, this gives them an impactful big three with Kyle Lowry, Jimmy Butler, and Bam Adebayo. Later on in the day, also, P.J. Tucker signed with the Heat as well to a 2-year deal. And this team, P.J. Tucker is going to fit that Heat culture. He's going to fit that grinding culture that Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra try to enforce with their players. It's a big reason why Jimmy Butler wanted to play there, so I understand why P.J. Tucker would have gotten his ring and wanted to go play for a culture that he enjoyed. But this is a Bulldog-type team now. They're going to be scary to face. Now, giving away Goran Dragic, that is your sixth man, so I guess you're going to lean heavy on Tyler Hero. They also proceeded to give an extension to Duncan Robinson for 5 years, $90 million. Now, everyone's talking about the big numbers that these guys are getting, but you have to look at the market. If Duncan Robinson is receiving 5 years, $90 million, it's nothing in comparison to the fact that Jimmy Butler got a 4-year extension as well, worth $184 million. So the superstars are still making significantly more than the role players, but if you're a shooter in today's league, you're going to get paid more. Duncan Robinson is a lockdown shooter and a knockdown shooter, and he's going to get paid. So I'm very happy to see. He's also an undrafted guy who was in a Division III college before he came in the NBA. It's really cool to see him get his bag. So honestly, if the Heat can work this out where their bench unit actually works, if Tyler Hero can go back to bubble Tyler Hero and bring in some scoring for them off the bench, then this could be a legitimate contender. But we'll have to wait and see. Moving on, we have the next big team that was very active. We have the Bulls. The Bulls don't tend to do many things when it comes to free agency or making trades. Their biggest free agency signing I can think of over the past 10 years was Carlos Boozer or Pau Gasol, but both of those were 10 years ago, and those guys were on the older end of their careers. Pau Gasol did get 2 All-Star appearances with them, so I guess that one was a good signing. But they don't tend to bring in many guys. So I'm glad to see Chicago making some big moves. We have Lonzo heading to the Bulls, Lonzo Ball, for 4 years, $85 million. Getting a good facilitator. This means that Kobe White, I guess, is either going to be the 2 guard or he's going to come off the bench. I'm going to be interested to see how they shape their team. And given these other moves, they brought in Alex Caruso as well. The meme himself is gone from the Lakers. I'm sorry, Lakers fans. But now he is a Chicago Bull for 4 years, $37 million. And then the bigger deal for them, besides these two, was they have completed a sign-and-trade for DeMar DeRozan. Now, once again, this information is not out yet about who is specifically going over to the Spurs for DeMar DeRozan, but it is rumored that Thaddeus Young is a big part, and they're trading away some high-quality picks, which, if this team works out for them, those picks could drop in value because they will be a better team, so it will be a lower pick. So hopefully, for their sake, this all works out. But I'll be interested to see how they're going to run it, because they could have Lonzo Ball at the point. Maybe you run Kobe at the 2. You run Zach LaVine at the 3. And DeMar DeRozan did play power forward a bunch for the Spurs this previous season, so he can run the 4 if you choose to. But I think this team is definitely a playoff contender. They tend to be on the very outskirts, 9, 10, 11 every single year. So hopefully this is the year that they can get over the hump and get in there. They still have to deal with LOWRY Marketing, depending upon what they do with him. Depends also upon how the rest of this team's going to look. Because currently at center, they also have Nikola Vucevic. So yeah, this team has got now 3 All-Stars, and you have Lonzo Ball, who's a great facilitator. He's only going up and up. He's fixed his jump shot. He can hit down he can knock down the threes for you. So hopefully this all works out for the Bulls. My next one I want to talk about. Let's talk about my Knicks. Because the Knicks were also very active this free agency period, and I think we made some moves that were very necessary. We re-signed Nerlens Noel and Alec Burks for basically the same contract, 3 years, $32 million, and 3 years, $30 million. Guys that were very impactful for us last year. Nerlens Noel on the defensive end. Alec Burks was basically our sixth man when Derrick Rose was starting. He was putting up buckets every day, and that's what he does. And then Derrick Rose, as I just mentioned, he also is getting re-signed for 3 years, $43 million. So we brought back some core pieces I'm very happy to see. We also extended Julius Randle. We gave him his bag. He came out most improved player, got his first All-Star appearance. So it's very much well-deserved. Julius Randle getting a 4-year, $117 million extension. The Knicks are bringing back the core. They're going to run it back. And hopefully we have a very similar result or a better result. I would love to see the Knicks get out of the first round. I know it almost seems petty of me because we've been in this drought for so long with the New York Knicks and not reaching the playoffs, and now I'm trying to ask them to get farther than I've seen them get in the past 10 years. But it'll be interesting now that we also brought in the Brooklyn native, the Bronx native. I believe it's from the Bronx. My mistake. Kemba Walker. Kemba Walker, big New York guy. He went to UConn for college because I was nearby. And he has now been bought out by the Oklahoma City Thunder, and he is headed to the New York Knicks. So we are kind of point guard heavy now, given the fact that we have Kemba, Derrick Rose, and Emmanuel Quickley. But this lineup could be looking pretty good for us. We also brought in Evan Fournier on a 4-year, $78 million deal. If he goes back to Magic Evan Fournier and not Celtics Evan Fournier, this will be very beneficial for the Knicks. So that lineup is looking something like Kemba Walker, Evan Fournier, R.J. Barrett, Julius Randle, and then Mitchell Robinson if he comes back healthy. That team could be deadly. Then you got Derrick Rose, Emmanuel Quickley, Alec Burks, Nerlens Noel off the bench. I'm assuming they're still going to play Taj Gibson, or maybe you squeeze Quentin Grimes, their 25th overall first-round pick this year, into that bench lineup somewhere. It could be very interesting. I believe the right thing to do would be to move on to the team that everyone wants to talk about right now. It's the LA Lakers. The LA Lakers did the LeBron thing, and they brought the superstars to the team. So now you have Russell Westbrook at your point. You have LeBron James at your small forward. And you have AD, who, as much as he says he doesn't want to play center, he's probably going to end up running some center this year. But they did the LeBron thing. They bring in the superstars. And now they're bringing in all the vets on the minimum contracts. So you got Carmelo. You got the Banana Boat boy. The only one in the Banana Boat to not even reach an NBA Finals. So, for that sake, I would love to see Carmelo get to a finals appearance, get a finals win, but at the same time, I'm an underdog liker. I don't tend to affiliate with the idea of watching repeats. Yes, I appreciate greatness. I appreciate being able throughout my life to watch LeBron's greatness, but at the same time, I enjoyed this season a lot more, seeing the Bucks grind and work it out, and seeing Chris Paul grind and work it out with the Suns, and the Bucks getting that chip. I was so just blown away by their fight this year. And the Lakers, yes, they could do it, but it's very interesting the vets they chose to bring in. So they brought in Carmelo. They brought in Trevor Ariza, so the rest of these guys were former Lakers at some point, which is also, I think, very interesting. Trevor Ariza started his career in L.A. Dwight Howard has been on the Lakers now 3 times, once with Kobe and Steve Nash, when he was just in his prime, everyone thought, but it kind of died out in L.A. Obviously, he was there in 2020 and got the ring with them, and now he's back. Wayne Ellington, also good shooting, which I was waiting to see if they were ever going to put shooting around LeBron because these guys need shooting around them. But they brought in Wayne Ellington, they brought in Kent Bazemore, and then a very late weird one, I think. These two guys weren't on the Lakers at any point, but they brought in Malik Monk, who had kind of fallen out of the Charlotte Hornets rotation. So it's interesting to see if he's going to get playtime, especially given the fact that the Lakers also brought back Talen Horton-Tucker. So I almost feel like Malik Monk is just some insurance shooting that's not really going to get playtime in LA either. But it'll be very interesting to see whether or not he does. And then I think a very underrated move, Kendrick Nunn got a 2-year contract with the Lakers. Another guy that had kind of fallen out of the rotation. Everyone was going crazy about Kendrick Nunn in 2020. He was having a breakout year, and then he fell out of the Heat rotation as well. So it's going to be very interesting. I mean, right now you're looking at probably Westbrook, and then I guess you choose one of these shooters to play shooting guard. So whether it be Wayne Ellington, whether it be Kent Bazemore, whether it be Malik Monk, I'm thinking it's probably going to be Wayne Ellington just because he's a straight-up shooter. LeBron at the 3, Carmelo at the 4, and like I said, you're probably going to have to run AD at the 5. I mean, you got Marc Gasol off your bench to be another center, but that's really it. I mean, you got Dwight Howard, but I doubt they're going to start Dwight Howard. So I assume AD is going to run the 5, unless they run AD at the 4 and then have Dwight start and have Melo coming off the bench. But I would think that LeBron would want to play with Melo. That's my opinion. But then your bench, you're looking at like Kendrick Nunn, Kent Bazemore, Trevor Ariza, Dwight Howard, and then THT on the bench, I would think. But once again, that doesn't make room for Malik Monk. I don't know where his role is going to play in this team. We got some other vets going to new teams. We have Rudy Gay signing a 2-year deal with the Utah Jazz. Beautiful pickup for them. They are a highly talented defensive team, a very athletic team. And yes, you could say they're not athletic because you got the old, slow white guys. You got the Bojan Bogdanovic, and you got Joe Ingles. And then Rudy Gobert's not the fastest guy in the world, but, you know, the other guys that they have handling the ball are extremely athletic, and they were one of the best three-point shooting teams last year, which is why they're a number 1 seed. Bringing Rudy Gay. Wow, that's going to be interesting in their locker room. You got 2 Rudys in there now. But you got Rudy Gay coming in. He's going to be athletic. He's going to get you some buckets when nobody else can. So you got 2 guys, really, Jordan Clarkson, I think, and Rudy Gay, who are going to come out here and just get you buckets. And the more points a team puts up, the harder it is to beat them. We also have Andre Drummond going to the 76ers on a 1-year deal. Going to be Joel Embiid's new backup, given the fact that Dwight Howard left. Definitely an upgrade from Dwight Howard. The Lakers, I think, didn't want Andre Drummond back. I didn't think Andre Drummond was going to get enough pay from the Lakers, to be honest with you. But we shall see, I guess, how Andre Drummond does as a backup to Joel Embiid. I saw a video on Instagram of them hooking up for the first time in Philly at the practice facility, at the locker rooms. And it does seem like Joel Embiid is very excited to have Andre Drummond on the team. Moving forward, let's just talk about some extensions. You know, we had some pretty cool extensions. Young guys getting big extensions. We got Trae Young getting a 5-year, $207 million extension. And John Collins getting a 5-year, $125 million extension to stay with the Atlanta Hawks. So, for at least the next 5 years, Atlanta fans, you got your 2 guys. Did you overpay for John Collins? No, which is a win on the Atlanta side. Did you overpay for Trae Young? No. He was going to get this bag eventually. You just allowed it to be where you've got him locked down now, and you don't even have to think about it next year. Trae Young and John Collins, of course. Trae Young, an all-star. John Collins, an athletic freak of nature, pulled this team into the Eastern Conference Finals this year. So if anyone deserved their bag, it was these 2 guys. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, another young gun, getting a 5-year, $172 million extension to stay with the OKC Thunder. They have now let us know that he is their future. He is the core centerpiece of this rebuild, and I'm excited to see Shai get some winning potential around him. You know, this OKC team, of course, has all these picks that they've mustered up, and Hopefully they can put a winning culture around Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, but it's very important that they lock down their superstar. The Dallas Mavericks, they extend Tim Hardaway Jr. to a 4-year, $74 million deal. Needed to do that. Beautiful for them. Tim Hardaway Jr. is the kind of guy that's kind of hot and cold, but for the Dallas Mavericks, the majority of the time he's been there, he's been pretty hot. He's been a torture from the three. So I'm very happy to see him get his extension. I was trying to see, I wanted it to work out with the Knicks. I liked it when he was on the Knicks. We gave him 2 shots. It didn't work out, so I'm glad he found a home in Dallas. Mike Conley, All-Star Mike Conley, don't forget about that. All-Star Mike Conley gets in a 3-year extension with the Utah Jazz for $72.5 million. Obviously, you got to give him this amount of money because he was an All-Star. He was, I guess, a crucial part of the team, even though sometimes you forgot he was on the court. But Mike Conley just finds a way over and over to keep getting a bag. He got that max contract from the Grizzlies that just ended, and everyone was saying that it was a horrible contract, but yet he comes out and he performs when he needs to perform, and he gets his bag every time. Jared Allen, this is one of the happiest moments for me, seeing a guy that the Nets didn't believe was part of their future when they brought in the 3 superstars. They trade away Jared Allen to the Cavaliers, and he is now getting a 5-year, $100 million extension. Jared Allen, the Fro, a guy that was getting paid by the Brooklyn Nets to basically stand under the net and get blocks. He goes to Cleveland. He becomes a scorer, heavy points getting in, 20 points a night, and now he's getting his bag. So it's very cool to see that for Jared Allen. 2 guys that were involved in a trade for each other earlier this year, Gary Trent Jr. and Norman Powell both got extensions from their new teams. Gary Trent is going to stay with the Raptors for 3 years, $54 million, and Norman Powell is staying with the Trailblazers for 5 years, $90 million. Now, these are very similar numbers, and it's kind of interesting to me to think about this, that the Raptors didn't want to keep Gary Trent. Now, for me, watching the Blazers, my apologies, the Blazers didn't want to keep Gary Trent. Watching the Blazers, I didn't believe that Norman Powell had that much more of an impact than Gary Trent did. I mean, Gary Trent is also 6-7 years younger than Norman Powell. You could build him, you could form him, and he was putting up very similar numbers. Of course, I believe, honestly, that Norman Powell performed worse in Portland than he did in Toronto. I mean, Toronto, he was putting up games where he was taking over. I didn't really see that same Norman Powell in Portland, but I guess he's doing enough, and that Portland has made their decision, and maybe this is another type deal where they're trying to get Damian Lillard to stay. I don't know the whole deal with Dame yet. He has been very back and forth on, the reports have been very back and forth on what he wants to do. Right now it's looking like he's probably going to stay in Portland. I also believe that, given the reports about Ben Simmons. Of course, Ben Simmons was a big guy, a big name that was going to be in this free agency, this trade period, this offseason. I believe right now with what the Philadelphia 76ers are asking for Ben Simmons, that he's also going to probably stay in Philly. So be interested to see how the rumor mill works in that these big-name guys are looking like they're going to stay with their teams right now. A couple more moves we have to talk about, kind of minor moves. We have Devontae Graham going to the Pelicans for 4 years, 400. Wow, anyone wishes it was $400 million, but 4 years, $47 million. I'll take $47 million too. Either way, but $47 million to go from the Charlotte Hornets to the New Orleans Pelicans. Devontae Graham, being from North Carolina, I watch a lot of Hornets games. They're always on TV. Very fun player to watch. Kind of fell out the rotation this year, given LaMelo breaking out, and you had Terry Rozier. So Devontae, he also had his worst shooting year of his career so far. So hopefully he can revitalize that in New Orleans. And, of course, New Orleans losing Lonzo Ball. Maybe he gets the starting point guard job. I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see. We have a cool move, I think, to be honest, is Spencer Dinwiddie going to the Wizards. Now, he came out and said that he was very interested in playing with Bradley Beal and Rui Hachimura in Washington. and that's why he decided to make this decision. Washington is so revamped with these guys that could be really good for them. That this team could put up a lot of points. I mean, obviously, you have Bradley Beal, who has been a top leader in the points in the league leaders over the past couple of years. He's putting 30 up a game. And now you just got a bunch of guys that really could give you buckets if this works out appropriately. I mean, KCP, if he knocks down his shots they got from the Westbrook trade, Kuzma, if he comes out and does what he keeps saying he wants to do and be an all-star for this team, this Wizards team could be pretty deadly, and they've been formed by these super teams. I mean, Dinwiddie kind of lost his position with the Nets, and he gets injured when he got injured. So now he's revitalizing his career in Washington. And Dinwiddie, before he got injured, don't forget, was a Sixth Man of the Year candidate. He was putting up 20 points a game. Don't forget Spencer Dinwiddie. So Spencer Dinwiddie joining this team. I'm very interested to see what the Wizards are looking like next year due to the fact that Bradley Beal is apparently going to stay. This team could be deadly. This team, I'm almost nervous for the Knicks, given the fact that you have the Chicago Bulls making all these moves. You have the Washington Wizards making all these moves. The Knicks made moves as well to improve, but somebody's going to have to get knocked out of this playoff contention. And if you have the Bulls, you have the Wizards, you have the Knicks all fighting to get up into that top echelon, hopefully there's somebody else in there that falls out and the Knicks can get in there as well. I think the last one I have to talk about today for y'all is Iguodala. Andre Iguodala is going back to the Warriors. Obviously, he won a couple rings, a Finals MVP with the Warriors. This allows the Warriors now, since they were apparently trying to bring in Kent Bazemore, but he accepted the deal with the Lakers. This now allows the Warriors to have a good wing, another veteran presence in that locker room, of course, and he already knows the culture. But there's not a lot of hope, it seems, from the media side of things for this Warriors team. I mean, I believe if you have Steph, if Klay comes back healthy, if you have Draymond, this team can be a championship contender every single time. Steph almost carried this team into the playoffs all by himself. So now you got help coming in with Klay Thompson coming back, and you have Iguodala back in the city now. I think this team is definitely a championship contender. You got to form these young guys off your bench, but it does seem like they just bring in random guys off the street and they mold into something great. And now you have these rookies coming in that I think are really good. You got Moody and you got Jonathan Kuminga, which could jump into your lineup and immediately be impactful. So we're going to end this podcast here with the two superstars who declined their options. We'll start with Chris Paul declined his $44 million option with the Phoenix Suns. However, shortly after the fact, it was a restructured deal in which the Suns brought him back for 4 years, $120 million. This means that if this deal goes all the way through, Chris Paul will be 40 years old, making $30 million. Which, for him, get your bag, Chris Paul. I mean, this is a steal for him if he can get this. I think it's crazy that you have a guy in Chris Paul that's going to be able to get paid $40 million or $30 million at 40 years old. However, this contract does have some ways in which after the first 2 years they can restructure it or they can not have to pay him all this money depending upon how it goes. If his age does catch up to him and he's not the same Chris Paul, then the Suns have some flexibility to get off this contract. Kawhi Leonard also declined his player option to stay with the LA Clippers for $36 million. Reports are on the up and up that Kawhi is considering leaving the Clippers. Now, if you get Kawhi, he's probably not going to be with y'all for the majority of next season with his ACL injury. But Kawhi Leonard's impactful. I mean, even if he's come back from an injury before and still been one of the top players in the league. Right now, do I believe that the market's super high for him given his injury? No, but we saw the fact that the Nets still brought in KD after he was coming off his Achilles injury. So whatever Kawhi decides to do, if he decides to ditch Paul George, I think it'd be kind of funny, but it also could take the playoff P branding off of Paul George's name. Because I believe Paul George works better on his own. I think best Paul George was still Indiana Paul George. Obviously, he did have his MVP caliber season in OKC, but best Paul George was Indiana Paul George. So if Kawhi ends up leaving, this could be good for Paul George's career. And then finally, we have Steph Curry. Also, apparently in the works of signing his second $200 million deal. He will be the first player in history to sign $200 million deals in one career. So congratulations, Steph Curry. And I believe that's all I got for you today. And that is what in the world is going on in the world of sports this week. Thank you for listening to the second episode of Sports World with Ethan Ingelo. I'll be back next week. Remember to like and subscribe if you like the podcast. Always showing your support helps. Thank you very much.